Hey everyone, The View is very upset at what some people want to do to women.
We keep putting this on women that their only worth in society, politics, policies is if they produce a baby or have a husband is the stupidest, most old-fashioned thing. We have come too far. The world has over 8 billion people. We no longer need to force people to procreate and pump out babies.
I'm Rich Lowry of National Review, and of course that was Sarah Haynes of The View. Now, I usually don't do View reactions on these videos, because once you start doing that, where are you going to stop? And it's all such unadulterated idiocy, including what we just heard, and I'm going to get into that more. But I want to talk about this because it really implicates a truly profound issue brought up by Isabel Brown, young woman who works at the Daily Wire at CPAC. And the reaction from The View was not just the ladies popping off, but they were really representing a deep-seated, unhealthy, destructive cultural tendency in our society. So before we get into it in depth, let's hear from Isabel Brown.
If you're not encouraging your children to grow up and have the courage to get married and have kids, more kids than they can afford before they think they're ready, it is high time to start. It is these choices, like deleting our dating apps and quitting birth control pills and saying I do at the altar, that ultimately trickle down into the political policies that we will see save our country.
So in a nutshell, don't be afraid to get married and have kids when you're young, even if this cuts against the cultural grain, even if the elite culture is telling you not to do this, to wait until everything's perfectly set up. No, do it now. That's a key to human happiness and a key to social robustness. That's Brown's essential point. Couple points you can make against this. We heard a lot of them on The View itself. Here's Whoopi Goldberg.
Just want to say, years ago, they used to come after women of color and accuse women of color of doing this very thing.
Wow.
And that's why they continue to cut all these programs and erase all these things.
Childcare programs?
Childcare name it, name it. And now, had I known that it turns out we are all just one group of women.
So the Whoopi Goldberg reaction is, how dare you hypocrite? Conservatives told us for years that African-American women shouldn't have children out of wedlock. Wait a minute. What's that? Oh, out of wedlock. You see, that was a key point, obviously. Conservatives were saying that's a bad idea to have kids when you're not married because it's better for the children, it's better for the mother, it's better for everyone if you have the father in the household. No one was against African-American women having children as a general abstract matter. No. And the point Brown was making was get married and have kids. That's a key part of the sequence. Get married, then have kids. Then there's a Sarah Haynes point, if we want to come back to her, that this is somehow diminishing women.
My ultimate beef with this is that it wraps a woman's worth up in her ovaries in a way that for too long has happened. The whole women's movement was not about bucking the trend of staying at home or loving tradition. It was giving women a choice to do what they wanted. And that's what this is too. Marriage, children, it's a choice.
Now that's absurd. Brown is not saying the sum total of women is their ovaries. But you know what? Women do have ovaries. They're aware of the fact that they have ovaries. Having ovaries is something that makes them different from men and something unique and wonderful. And most women want to have children, according to all sorts of public opinion surveys. Now, that doesn't mean the only thing they can do is have children. Obviously, look at Brown herself. She has a small child, yet here she is. She has a career at the Daily Wire, and as a political commentator, here she is speaking at a political conference and making a statement that the ladies at The View are spending a lot of emotional energy reacting to. So obviously, she's not saying that any woman is just defined by their ovaries. Then there was this reaction from Sunny Hostin that actually, shockingly, kind of got to the crux of the matter in some respects.
I think it's just really
Reckless.
reckless to be suggesting that people should have children when you now know in this country there's this affordability crisis, and for a two-person household, a married household, you need over $400,000 for childcare. Over $400,000. Most people don't make over $400,000. So she's advocating for people to be born into poverty, people not being able to feed those children, people not being able to educate those children, and people not being able to house those children at the same time when this government is cutting all of the services that would allow people to have families and big families and children.
Now, this is an argument that a lot of people find persuasive, right? Don't you dare have a child until you have all your ducks in a row and you're financially comfortable. The New York Times ran this piece just recently. The birth rate is plunging. Why some say that's a good thing. Now, we've talked in the past about the journalistic formulation experts say or some say, usually a way for publication to launder its point of view through its reporting. But it is doubtless true that some say this. Here's a passage from the New York Times. In interviews, many women talked about establishing themselves, getting a degree or a stable job before settling down with a partner. They often talked about watching their mothers struggle under the weight of responsibility. Whatever the reasons, more young women are making it to their mid to late 20s without children. For the first time, almost half of the country's 30-year-old women are childless. In 1976, it was just 18%. Now, we don't want to be overly reductive and simplistic about this. There are genuine obstacles to getting married and having kids these days. If you're a young woman, it's going to be difficult in today's environment to find a suitable young man, or more difficult than it should be. There are genuine issues around affordability, especially with regard to housing. That's why it'd be a very good thing to build more houses, to grow the supply, to meet the demand, and you'd see prices diminish, which would be a very good thing. But it is wrong to think you have to have every duck perfectly lined up in a row in order to embark on a family life. And this is the point that Brown is making that's very important. I also want to go here to the work of the sociologist Brad Wilcox at the University of Virginia. Wahoo wah. I'm a graduate of the University of Virginia. Brad does fantastic work, and he calls this the Midas mindset. The idea you spend your 20s finding yourself, fulfilling yourself, building your career, traveling, having lots of wonderful experiences, and then in your 30s, then it all gets real in terms of family life, and you see all that happen. There are a couple big fallacies here. One is the idea that getting married is going to be an awful encumbrance. You look at the data, it all shows young people who get married and have kids are happier than their peers. In a piece for the online magazine Compact, Wilcox points out that young single women aged 22 to 35 are more likely to report that they are lonely and unsatisfied with their lives. 55% report that they are frequently lonely, compared to 36% who are married. Likewise, 47% of unmarried young women said they are not satisfied with their lives, compared to just 18% who are married. Same thing with young men. Those who are single and childless are more likely to be lonely and unsatisfied. Unmarried young men are 23 percentage points more likely to be frequently lonely and more than twice as likely to be unsatisfied with their lives compared to their married peers. And it's not just marriage. You throw in kids, you see the same kind of results. So same age cohort, 22 to 35, among those young women, those who are married and have kids, 41% report being very happy. Young women who are married but don't have kids, 38%. Then you see the big drop. Unmarried moms, 18%. Unmarried young women who don't have kids, 14%. So look at that huge disparity. Among married moms who are young women, 41% report being very happy. Only 14% who are unmarried and don't have kids report the same thing. Among men, you see almost exactly the same phenomenon. Married dads, 37% report being very happy. A little bit more of a fall off to married men without kids, 29% very happy. Then unmarried dads, 15%. Unmarried childless, also 14%, matching young women. So there you have it, pretty conclusive evidence. The one way to guarantee as a young person that you're not very happy is not to get married and not to have kids. But look, what's wrong with waiting? Maybe someone wants to get married and have kids, but they do have things they want to do during their 20s and they don't feel financially secure, so they'll just wait. Sometimes waiting's the prudent thing to do. And by the way, some people, they don't have choices. We don't want to discount the circumstances that do constrain people in these areas, but waiting often is going to make it harder to get the outcome you want if you want to get married and have kids. Look at this piece of data. So this is a calculation of the percentage odds of a woman without a child at any given age of eventually having a child. So at age 20, if a woman doesn't have a kid, still 78% chance that she will. Eventually, age 25, very good odds, still 70%. Then at age 30, you begin to see a real fall off, just a 52% chance. Age 35, 25% chance. Age 40, 7% chance. So that's why there's a lot to be said for just getting on with it if you can. And Isabel Brown used this word courage. Have the courage to get married and have kids at a young age. Why is that the appropriate word? Well, there are a couple reasons. One of them is just the reason why so many people aren't even dating. Brad Wilcox again. One report finds that about 2/3 of young adults who are not married but interested in marrying had not dated or dated only a few times in the last year, in part because they lack the confidence to approach the opposite sex. Another survey found that more than 1/3 of single young adults are not even looking to date. So yeah, some courage to go talk to someone you don't know, courage to take a little financial risk and just trust that God is going to help you figure it out, or you and your spouse are going to figure it out, and courage to row against the cultural tide. Very few people in the pop culture and the elite culture are encouraging young people to go down this path and think about marriage and kids in this way. To underline that point, let's go back to The View.
I gave our girl Isabel a little Google. She has a baby. She has a 1-year-old. Of course, she thinks everyone should have a lot of kids. She has a 1-year-old that sleeps all day. I also was like, I'm going to have a bunch more kids. Wait till your kid is up and walking.
Now, that's the actress and comedian Whitney Cummings. So I'm not so sure that it's the case that when a child is under 1 and you're changing diapers all the time, the child isn't sleeping during the night, that's easier than when the kid's a toddler. But put that aside. I want to emphasize what happened right after this statement from Cummings, the second part of her riposte to Isabel Brown, which I think was the most telling thing about this segment. Take a look.
You spend most of your day trying to get its shoes on.
Yeah.
You're probably going to rethink how many kids you have. That is my son. Yes, that is my new baby. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. So I just would say to Isabel,
Clearly,
let's check.
pants were optional.
That's right. We don't do pants. We do Winnie the Pooh at my house.
I love that so much because after all the talk on this program, how terrible it is to encourage people to have children, here they see a child and everyone reacts with spontaneous joy and affirmation. He's so cute. He's so wonderful. They don't say, oh gosh, this is such a burden. How are you going to afford his college education or whatever it is? No, they react like human beings, because no matter how deep it is in us, no matter how encrusted with idiotic ideologies, we all know children are wonderful blessings, which is why Isabel Brown is right to encourage people to do it and do it sooner rather than later. It is good for them. It's good for our society and its renewal, and it's good for the children who wouldn't exist otherwise. So let's stop the pile-on against Isabel Brown and recognize her wisdom. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.